Today we begin the journey to Valkyrie space. We don't go for CE. The announcement came from Earth on a cold morning in March. President Young Suk Nam stood before the cameras, her face composed but her eyes burning with barely controlled anger. Behind her, the flags of Earth's United Nations hung motionless. 23 years ago, humanity joined the Galactic Coalition in good faith, she began. We believed in their laws. We trusted in their promise to protect those who seek peace and truth. Yesterday, that trust was betrayed. Ambassador Hana Lee and 36 crew members were murdered while under diplomatic protection. The coalition has chosen to form a committee instead of delivering justice. She paused, letting her words sink in across billions of watching humans. Therefore, effective immediately, Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Coalition. We will no longer recognize their authority over human affairs. To the Valkyrie Empire, I say this. You silenced our messenger because you feared the truth she carried. Now you will learn what silence truly costs. You wanted war. You have it. The galaxy's reaction was swift. Most species in the coalition dismissed Earth's declaration as emotional posturing. Humanity was a junior member with limited technology. They had no energy shields like the Valkyrie. Their weapons were primitive kinetic systems instead of advanced energy arrays. Their ships were slower and their numbers smaller. The Valkyrie ambassador to the coalition actually laughed during a public broadcast. Let the humans come, he said with obvious amusement. We will crush them in a week. They are children playing at war. What the galaxy didn't know was that humanity had spent 23 years learning. They had studied every alien technology they could access. They had reverse-engineered systems, improved designs, and most importantly, they had never forgotten their own bloody history. Admiral Taeyang Choi stood in the command center at Earth's orbital headquarters, watching displays that showed military activity across 14 human star systems. Ships were being recalled from civilian duties. Factories that had built cargo vessels now retooled for war production. Soldiers who had been training for peacekeeping operations now drilled for actual combat. General Min-Ho Kang entered the command center. He was a broad-shouldered man with gray in his hair and scars on his hands from his younger days. All ground forces are reporting ready status, he said. 200,000 Marines trained and equipped. Another 500,000 in reserve. Will it be enough? Asked Admiral Taeyang Choi. The Valkyrie have never fought an enemy like us. They follow rules of engagement. They believe in honorable combat between fleet formations. General Min-Ho Kang smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We're going to teach them about guerrilla warfare. Across the command center, Dr. Suji Han was giving a presentation to the senior military staff. She was young for someone in charge of Earth's Advanced Weapons Research Division, but her intelligence was undeniable. The Valkyrie shields are designed to disperse energy weapons, she explained, showing diagrams on the display. They're very effective against lasers and plasma, but we've tested them against kinetic projectiles. The results are interesting. How interesting? Admiral Taeyang Choi asked. Their shields barely slow down a solid object moving at high velocity. They were designed for the wrong threat. Dr. Suji Han pulled up footage of tests. Our railguns can punch through Valkyrie shields like they're not even there. So our primitive weapons are actually an advantage? Exactly. The galaxy moved toward energy weapons because they're cleaner and more efficient. But we kept developing kinetic systems because that's what we knew. Now our old technology is perfect for the enemy we're facing. She clicked to another display. I'm also presenting Project Thunderstrike. We've built missiles that accelerate to near light speed using our fusion drives. Each one hits with the force of a nuclear weapon. But they're just chunks of dense metal moving very fast. General Min-Ho Kang leaned forward. How many can we produce? Current factories can make 5,000 per week. If we convert civilian manufacturing, maybe 10,000. Do it, Admiral Taeyang Choi said immediately. Convert everything. We need every advantage we can get. On Mars, Captain Hyun Yu was putting his squadron through training exercises. He was one of Earth's best pilots, with reflexes that had been enhanced by years of simulation training. His squadron of 96 pilots were equally skilled. The Valkyrie fly in tight formations, he told them during the briefing. They rely on overlapping shields and coordinated fire. It's effective against other fleet battles, but it makes them predictable. We're going to fly like wasps attacking a bear. Fast, aggressive, and from every direction at once. One of his pilots, a young woman named Isul, raised her hand. Sir, our fighters don't have shields. One hit and we're dead. That's right. So don't get hit. Captain Hyun Yu pulled up a simulation. We're faster and more maneuverable than anything the Velkari have. We use that speed to get in close where their big guns can't track us. Then we hit their weak points and get out before they can respond. It sounds dangerous, another pilot said. It is. Extremely dangerous. But we're not fighting for glory or honor. We're fighting because Ambassador Hana Lee and 36 others were murdered. We're fighting because the galaxy needs to learn that you can't attack humans without consequences. His voice grew harder. And we're going to win because we're willing to do whatever it takes. The training continued for 6 weeks. Every day more ships finished construction. Every day more soldiers completed their preparation. Earth's 14 colony systems contributed their own forces. The outer colonies, where life was harder and people were tougher, sent some of the fiercest fighters. President Young Suk Nam visited the shipyards orbiting Earth's moon. She walked through the construction bays where 847 warships were being prepared. These ships were not elegant like Velkari vessels. They were functional, brutal designs built for one purpose. How long until the fleet is ready? She asked Admiral Taeyang Choi, who accompanied her. 3 more weeks for final systems checks. We're loading the last of the Thunderstrike missiles now. And our chances of victory? The Admiral was quiet for a moment. Mathematically, not good. The Velkari Empire has over 200,000 ships. We have less than 1,000. They have better shields, better sensors, and more experience. But President Young Suk Nam could hear the unspoken word. But we have something they don't understand. Humans are very good at learning from our mistakes. For thousands of years we fought each other with ever-increasing brutality. We learned every dirty trick, every tactical advantage, every psychological weapon. The Velkari have fought colonial wars against weaker species. They've never faced an enemy that fights the way we do. Back on Earth in a small apartment in Seoul, a young boy watched the news with his grandmother. The reports showed ships launching, soldiers training, and experts debating humanity's chances. "Are we going to lose, grandmother?" the boy asked. The old woman looked at her grandson. She had lived through Earth's final unification wars 40 years ago. She had seen humanity at its worst and its best. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but I'll tell you something about humans. We're stubborn. When someone pushes us, we push back harder. When someone tells us we can't do something, we find a way to do it anyway. The Velkari think we're weak because our technology is simple. They don't understand that simple can be strong." She pointed at the news feed showing Captain Yeon Yu's fighters practicing attack runs. "Those pilots know they might not come home. They're doing it anyway. That's what makes us human. We fight for each other, even when the odds are impossible." On the Velkari homeworld, military leaders gathered to discuss the human threat. Most of them were not worried. Earth's withdrawal from the coalition was seen as a tantrum thrown by a weak species. "Let them come," one commander said. "We'll destroy their fleet in the first engagement. Then we'll occupy their worlds and teach them the price of defying us." But one older Velkari officer, a veteran of many campaigns, was not so certain. "I've read the reports about human history," he said quietly. "They spent thousands of years fighting each other with primitive weapons. They developed something called total war, where entire populations were mobilized for conflict. They created weapons so terrible they almost destroyed themselves multiple times. That was before they joined the coalition," another officer dismissed him. "They've been peaceful for decades. No, they've been quiet. There's a difference." The old officer looked at the star charts showing human space. "We killed their ambassador. We challenged their honor. I think we're about to learn why a peaceful human is much more dangerous than an angry one." His warnings were ignored. 3 weeks later, the Earth Defense Force assembled in the outer solar system. 847 ships arranged themselves into fleet formations. They were not the largest fleet in the galaxy, but every ship was crewed by people who understood what they were fighting for. Admiral Taeyang Choi stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Retribution. Around him, officers monitored hundreds of displays showing every ship's status. "All vessels report ready," Commander Borishin announced. She was his tactical officer, a brilliant strategist who had helped design their battle plans. "Send the message to all ships," Admiral Taeyang Choi ordered. "Today we begin the journey to Velkari space. We don't go for sea. The Velkari system of Talos 4 was a major military outpost. 3 planets orbited a yellow sun, and the second planet hosted a massive shipyard complex. Over 500 Velkari military vessels used this system as their home base. It was a symbol of their power and reach across the galaxy. Warlord Thexnar commanded the defense fleet. He was a veteran of 30 campaigns, his chitinous armor decorated with marks of honor. When reports came that a human convoy was approaching the system, he felt nothing but contempt. A trade convoy? He clicked to his officers, the Velkari equivalent of laughter. The humans send merchants while declaring war? They truly are foolish. Should we destroy them, Warlord? Asked his tactical officer. No, let them come closer. We'll capture them and parade them through the coalition as proof of human weakness. Thexnar settled into his command chair. Deploy 140 ships, more than enough to intimidate these primitives into surrender. The Velkari fleet moved into position. Their ships were elegant and deadly, with sleek hulls covered in energy shield emitters. Each vessel bristled with plasma cannons and energy torpedoes. They arranged themselves in a perfect formation, shields overlapping to create an almost impenetrable barrier. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Taeyang Choi watched the Velkari fleet deploy. Commander Borashin stood beside him, studying the tactical displays with cold calculation. They're using Formation Pattern 7, she said quietly. Just like we predicted. Shields overlapped, heavy ships in the center, lighter escorts on the flanks. Are they scanning us? Admiral Taeyang Choi asked. Yes, sir. They're reading us as cargo vessels with minimal weapons. Our disguise transponders are working perfectly. Borashin smiled. They think we're merchants. Ensign Jiho Kwan sat at the weapons station, his palms sweating despite the cool air on the bridge. This was his first real combat mission. He was 19 years old and terrified, but he had volunteered for this. Everyone on these ships had volunteered. All ships battle formation Omega. Admiral Taeyang Choi ordered calmly. Prepare to drop transponder masks on my mark. Across the human fleet, ships began to shift positions. What had looked like a loose convoy of cargo vessels suddenly moved with military precision. Gun ports opened. Missile bays armed. Railgun batteries charged with barely contained energy. Velkari fleet is closing to weapons range, Borashin reported. Their shields are at maximum power. Let them get confident, the Admiral said. Wait for it. On the Velkari flagship, Warlord Thexnar felt pleased with himself. The human ships were not running. They were simply drifting forward like insects flying into a web. Open communications. Tell them to surrender and we'll be merciful. Before his communications officer could respond, the human ships revealed themselves. Now, Admiral Taeyang Choi said quietly. 847 human warships dropped their disguises and opened fire simultaneously. The effect was devastating. Railguns accelerated solid metal slugs to tremendous speeds. These were not elegant energy beams. They were brutal, simple projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The Velkari shields, designed to disperse energy weapons, barely registered them as threats. The slugs punched through the shields like they were paper. The first volley caught the Velkari completely unprepared. 3 battleships simply came apart as kinetic rounds tore through their hulls. A dozen cruisers lost power as railgun fire destroyed their reactor cores. All weapons continuous fire. Commander Borashin called out. Don't give them time to adjust. Ensign Jiho Kwan's hands flew across his weapons console. He watched trajectories and fired again and again, each shot precisely calculated. The Thunderstrike missiles launched next, accelerating to incredible speeds. Each one was just a dense metal projectile, but at near light speed they hit like the wrath of an angry god. Warlord, we're under attack, the tactical officer shrieked on the Velkari flagship. Our shields are failing! Thexnar stared in disbelief at his displays. This was impossible. The humans were using primitive kinetic weapons. Such technology was thousands of years old. How were they cutting through modern shields? Return fire! Destroy them! He ordered. The Velkari fleet tried to respond, but their careful formation was now a liability. They were packed together for maximum shield overlap. When the human weapons punched through those shields and struck ships, the explosions damaged neighboring vessels. Launch fighters, Captain Hyon Yu shouted into his communications system. From the human carriers, thousands of small strike craft poured out like angry wasps. The Velkari had fighters too, but they were designed for long-range combat with energy weapons. Captain Hyon Yu led his squadron in close, far closer than any sane pilot would fly. His fighter weaved between railgun fire and missile trails, moving with inhuman precision. Stay on your targets, he called to his pilots. Hit their sensor arrays first. Blind them! The human fighters swarmed the Velkari vessels. They were smaller and faster, able to dodge the enemy's weapons, Each fighter carried kinetic missiles designed for close-range attacks. They targeted the sensor clusters, the communication arrays, and the shield generators. Isolde, the young pilot who had questioned the tactics during training, found herself face-to-face with a Valkyrie cruiser. The massive ship loomed in her viewport, its weapons swiveling to track her. She jinked left, then right, her enhanced reflexes barely keeping her ahead of the plasma fire. Come on, she muttered, lining up her shot. The cruiser's shield generator was exposed, a weak point in the design. She fired both missiles and broke away hard, the G-forces crushing her into her seat despite the compensators. The missiles struck true. The shield generator exploded, and suddenly that section of the cruiser was vulnerable. A human destroyer saw the opening and poured railgun fire into the gap. The cruiser lost power and began to drift. On the Retribution, Commander Bora Shin coordinated the entire battle like a conductor leading an orchestra. Third Fleet, concentrate fire on the enemy flagship. First and Second Fleets pursue the vessels trying to retreat. Don't let them escape to warn others. Admiral Taeyang Choi watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. Years of planning were paying off. The Valkyrie had expected a traditional fleet battle. Instead, they were facing tactics developed over thousands of years of human warfare. Sir, the enemy is trying to regroup, Bora Shin reported. Warlord Thexnar is ordering his ships to fall back and form a defensive sphere. Don't give them time. All ships pursue and engage. Target their command and control ships first. The human fleet pressed forward aggressively. This was not how civilized species fought wars. They were supposed to exchange fire at long range, allow damaged ships to withdraw and follow proper protocols. Humans did none of that. They fought like predators, overwhelming their prey with relentless attacks. Warlord Thexnar realized with growing horror that he was losing. Impossible. They outnumbered these humans. They had better technology. This couldn't be happening. All ships, emergency retreat, he ordered. We need to... A Thunderstrike missile hit his flagship's engine section. The impact sent shockwaves through the entire vessel. Systems failed across the ship. The lights died, replaced by emergency illumination. Warlord, we've lost main power, his engineering officer reported. Hull breaches on 17 decks. Through the chaos, Thexnar watched his fleet being torn apart. Of the 140 ships he had confidently deployed, fewer than 50 were still operational. The humans hadn't just defeated them, they had massacred them. Captain Hyan Yu reformed his squadron after the battle. He counted his pilots. 14 were missing, their fighters destroyed in the furious combat. It hurt, but he pushed the pain aside. There would be time to mourn later. The human fleet regrouped around the crippled Valkyrie ships. Some were still functional but had surrendered. Others were drifting wrecks. Admiral Taeyang Choi stood on his bridge surveying the results. Final count, he said quietly. Commander Bora Shin read from her display. Enemy vessels destroyed, 89. Enemy vessels captured, 31. Enemy vessels escaped, 20. Our losses? 24 ships destroyed. 41 damaged but repairable. Total casualties, 3,017. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the weight of those numbers. 3,000 humans dead in their first battle. It was a terrible price, but they had faced a force nearly twice their size and won decisively. The mathematics of war were brutal but simple. Record a message, Admiral Taeyang Choi ordered. Broadcast it on all coalition frequencies. Ensign Jiho Kwan set up the communication system with shaking hands. The Admiral stood before the camera, his uniform showing scorch marks from where a console had exploded. Earlier in the battle, this is Admiral Taeyang Choi of the Earth Defense Force. What happened here today is a message to the Valkyrie Empire and to the Galactic Coalition. You destroyed the Herald's voice. You murdered Ambassador Hana Lee and 36 others who sought only to deliver truth. The Coalition chose politics over justice. We choose action over words. He paused, letting his message sink in. This is for the Herald's voice. This is for every innocent life the Valkyrie have taken, and we are just getting started. To the Valkyrie Empire, know this: we will not stop. We will not negotiate. But to what? 6 months. For 6 brutal months, the war ground on like a machine that consumed ships and lives without mercy. The Valkyrie Empire had mobilized its full military might, but they found that fighting humanity was nothing like their previous colonial campaigns. General Minho Kang stood in the tactical center of the underground base on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. Around him, holographic displays showed dozens of ongoing operations across multiple star systems. His strategy was simple but brutal: never let the enemy rest. "Operation Bleeding Edge is proceeding as planned," he said to his staff officers. "We're not trying to win fleet battles. We're making it impossible for them to supply their fleet." On a Velkari supply route near the Kronos sector, Captain Nari Song's stealth frigate Silent Arrow drifted in the darkness between stars. Her ship was small, barely 100 meters long, and covered in advanced stealth plating that humanity had developed from captured alien technology. To enemy sensors, she was just another piece of space debris. "Contact," whispered her sensor officer. "Velkari supply convoy, 12 cargo ships, 4 escort destroyers." Captain Nari Song studied the tactical display. "Wait for them to pass the nebula. We'll use the interference to mask our approach." The Silent Arrow crept forward like a hunting shark. Nari was only 28 years old, but she had become one of the most feared human captains. The Velkari had started calling her ship the Ghost because it appeared from nowhere, struck, and vanished before they could respond. "Fire," she said quietly. Torpedoes launched from the Silent Arrow's tubes. They were not guided missiles but simple rockets with dense metal warheads. They accelerated silently through space, and by the time the Velkari detected them, it was too late. 3 supply ships exploded. The remaining convoy scattered in panic. The escort destroyers tried to locate the Silent Arrow, but Nari had already changed position. She fired again, destroying 2 more supply ships before slipping away into the darkness. "Convoy destroyed," her tactical officer reported. "Estimated loss to enemy: 4,000 tons of fuel, 8,000 tons of ammunition, and supplies for 50,000 soldiers." "Mark this route as burned," Captain Nari Song said. "They'll avoid it now. Move to alternate hunting ground Beta 7. Across Velkari space, dozens of human strike teams were conducting similar operations. They destroyed fuel depots, ambushed supply convoys, and sabotaged shipyards. The Velkari fleet was massive, but it needed constant supplies to operate. Humanity was strangling that supply line. Lieutenant Dehyano led a boarding team aboard a human assault shuttle. He was a Marine, and his squad of 40 soldiers were preparing for one of the most dangerous operations in warfare: capturing an enemy ship. "Remember the briefing," he told his troops as they approached their target. "A Velkari carrier. They have 4,000 defenders. We have 200 Marines, but we have surprise and we have determination." "Sir, shouldn't we wait for more support?" asked one of the younger Marines. Daehyun looked at the nervous soldier. "The Velkari think their carrier is safe here. They won't expect an attack. That carrier has enough supplies to support their fleet for a month. If we take it, we hurt them badly." The assault shuttle attached to the Velkari carrier's hull like a parasite. Cutting torches burned through the armor plating. Alarms blared throughout the enemy ship, but the humans were already inside. "Move! Move! Move!" Daehyun shouted, leading his team through the breach. They encountered the first Velkari defenders within seconds. The corridor erupted in weapons fire. The Velkari were larger than humans, with thick chitinous armor that could stop small arms fire. But the Marines used shape-charge weapons specifically designed to penetrate that armor. The fighting was brutal in close quarters. What the Velkari didn't understand was that humans were persistence hunters. Their ancestors had hunted prey by chasing it until it collapsed from exhaustion. Those instincts were still there. When a Velkari soldier wounded a Marine, that Marine kept fighting. When corridors filled with smoke and fire, the humans pushed through anyway. Daehyun's squad fought for 14 hours straight. They captured one section, held it, then moved to the next. Other Marine teams were doing the same throughout the carrier. Slowly, methodically, they cleared deck after deck. The Velkari fought back desperately, but they had never trained for this kind of close combat. They were used to fighting from the protection of their ships. Now the humans were inside, and every corner could hide an ambush. After 18 hours of continuous fighting, Lieutenant Daehyuno stood on the carrier's bridge. Around him, exhausted Marines secured the last remaining Velkari crew members. Of his original 40 soldiers, only 19 were still standing. The rest were dead or too wounded to continue, but they had won. One Velkari carrier, worth billions in resources and supplies, was now a human prize. On the occupied colony of New Jeju, Sora Lim crawled through a drainage tunnel beneath the Velkari military headquarters. She was a civilian engineer, But when the Valkyrie had occupied her world 3 months ago, she had become a resistance fighter. Behind her, 6 other colonists followed through the darkness. They carried homemade explosives built from industrial chemicals and electronic components. The Valkyrie had superior technology, but they didn't understand human improvisation. "The support column should be right above us," whispered Sora, checking her stolen datapad. She had designed some of these buildings herself before the war. Now she was using that knowledge to destroy them. They placed the explosives carefully, then retreated back through the tunnels. 20 minutes later, the charges detonated. The entire headquarters building collapsed, killing over 300 Valkyrie officers and destroying their command and control systems for the entire sector. Sora watched from a safe house as emergency vehicles rushed to the site. She felt no joy in the deaths, only grim satisfaction. The Valkyrie had bombed her city from orbit, killing thousands of innocent civilians. This was payback. "What's next?" asked one of her fighters, a teenager who had lost his entire family in the bombing. "The fuel depot at the spaceport," Sora replied. "We hit them again tomorrow night." Dr. Sujihan worked around the clock in Earth's weapons research facility. She had been studying captured Valkyrie technology for months, and she had made a breakthrough. "I've cracked their shield technology," she announced to the research team. "It's elegant but inflexible. The shields oscillate at a specific frequency to disperse energy. If we modulate our kinetic weapons to match that frequency, we can disrupt the shields before impact." "How long to retrofit our weapons?" asked the military liaison. 3 weeks to develop the modification, 6 weeks to install it across the fleet." Suji pulled up simulation data. "But the results will be worth it. Our already effective weapons will become devastating." While the scientists worked, the human fleet continued its relentless campaign. They didn't fight fair. They didn't follow the civilized rules of warfare that the galaxy expected. They fought to win, using every advantage they could find. Admiral Taeyang Choi reviewed casualty reports in his quarters aboard the Retribution. 6 months of war had cost humanity dearly. 412 ships destroyed, 67,000 personnel killed, entire Marine battalions wiped out in boarding actions. Colonies bombed from orbit, but the Valkyrie had lost more, much more. Their official reports claimed minimal losses, but human intelligence painted a different picture. 34,000 ships destroyed or disabled, 89 supply installations destroyed, 12 colonies in open revolt. The coalition observers noted with growing alarm that humanity was not just surviving, but adapting. Every battle taught them new lessons. Every captured ship revealed new secrets. The humans learned and improved constantly. Commander Bora Shin entered the Admiral's quarters with the latest intelligence. "The Valkyrie are pulling ships from their border regions," she reported. "They're consolidating their forces for a major offensive." "How major?" Admiral Taeyang Choi asked. "Estimates suggest 50,000 ships, all converging on a single target." She paused. "Earth itself, sir. They're planning to end this war by destroying our homeworld." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. He thought of the billions of people on Earth. His own family lived in Seoul. His daughter was only 6 years old. "How long until they can launch the attack?" 2 months, maybe 3. They need to complete their mobilization and coordinate across multiple fleet commands. Admiral Taeyang Choi stood and looked at the star chart on his wall. Earth was marked with a blue circle, so small among the vast map of the galaxy. But it was home. It was worth fighting for. "Recall all ships," he ordered. "Every vessel, every soldier. We're going home to defend Earth. Sir, that will leave the Valkyrie supply lines intact. It will give them time to recover. I know. But Earth is more important than tactical advantages. If they want to fight the decisive battle at our home, then that's where we'll meet them." His voice was hard as steel. "We'll show them what happens when you threaten a human's home." Captain Hyeon Yu received the recall order while his squadron was refueling at a forward base. He had lost half his original pilots over the past 6 months. Each loss hurt like a knife to his heart, but he couldn't show that pain to the survivors. "Pack up," he told them. "We're going home." "To defend Earth?" asked Isolde, who had survived every mission through a combination of skill, and the Valkyrie fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system. 50,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history. Their formations stretched across millions of kilometers of space, a wall of metal and firepower that seemed unstoppable. Warlord Thexnar, who had survived his defeat at Talos 4, now commanded this overwhelming force. He had been given one simple order: destroy Earth completely. Leave nothing alive, nothing standing, nothing that could ever threaten the Velkari Empire again. Begin the advance, he ordered from his new flagship. All ships maintain formation. We will sweep aside their defenses like dust. On Earth, Admiral Taeyang Choi stood in the command center buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around him, thousands of displays showed the approaching enemy. His own fleet numbered 3,200 ships, all that humanity could muster. The mathematics were brutal. 50,000 against 3,200. All defensive platforms are online, reported Commander Borishin. Mars defense grid is ready. Lunar weapons arrays are charged. Every ship that can fly is in position. President Young Suk Nam stood beside the admiral. She had refused to evacuate, choosing to remain on Earth with her people. Can we win this? She asked quietly. Admiral Taeyang Choi was silent for a moment. By conventional warfare? No, we're outnumbered 15-1. But we're not fighting conventionally. He pointed to a display showing the moon. Dr. Suji Han has prepared something special. Across Earth cities, billions of people watched the sky. They knew the Velkari were coming. Some prayed. Others prepared weapons, determined to fight even if the battle reached the ground. Parents held their children. Soldiers checked their equipment one final time. In Seoul, a young girl stood on her apartment balcony with her grandmother. The old woman, who had lived through humanity's bloodiest wars, looked up at the stars with defiant eyes. Are the bad aliens going to hurt us? The girl asked. They're going to try, her grandmother replied. But they don't understand humans very well. We look small and weak, but inside we're strong, and we never give up. Never. The Velkari fleet continued its advance into the Sol system. They moved past Neptune, then Uranus, approaching Jupiter's orbit. Earth lay ahead, a blue-green jewel that they intended to shatter. Deploy the first wave, Warlord Thexnar commanded. 10,000 ships, crush their outer defenses. Captain Hyon Yu sat in his fighter, one of 5,000 pilots waiting in the launch bays of the carrier Dauntless. His hands were steady on the controls, but his heart was pounding. This was it. The battle that would decide everything. All pilots, this is Admiral Choi, came the voice over the communications system. You know what's at stake. Our homes, our families, everything we love is behind us. There is no retreat. There is no surrender. There is only victory or death. Make every shot count. Make them remember why they should have left us alone. Ready to launch, Hyon said to his squadron. Around him, his pilots responded with grim determination. They had all lost friends over the past months. Now it was time to make those losses mean something. The Velkari vanguard entered engagement range. They opened fire with thousands of energy weapons, brilliant beams of plasma that could vaporize human ships in seconds. The human fleet responded with railguns and missiles, filling space with kinetic death. Private Isul Jang manned a railgun platform on one of Earth's orbital defense stations. She was 19 years old and had enlisted the day after the Herald's voice was destroyed. Now she was firing continuously, her weapon tracking targets automatically while she coordinated with other gun crews. Target destroyer-class vessel, bearing 270, she called out. Fire for effect! 6 railgun platforms fired simultaneously. The solid slugs crossed the distance in seconds and punched through the Velkari destroyer's shields. The ship broke apart, adding to the growing field of debris. But for every Velkari ship destroyed, they destroyed human vessels in return. The outer defense ring began to crumble under the massive assault. Ships exploded in brilliant flares. Defense platforms went silent as enemy fire overwhelmed them. Fall back to the second line, Admiral Taeyang Choi ordered calmly. Execute Retreat Plan Alpha. The human ships withdrew in organized waves, firing as they moved. This wasn't a rout but a planned withdrawal. They were drawing the Velkari deeper into the system, closer to Earth. Warlord Thexnar watched the human retreat with satisfaction. They're breaking. Send in the second wave. 15,000 ships. We'll overwhelm them completely. On Mars, General Minho Kang commanded the ground defense forces and the orbital weapons grid. The red planet had been heavily fortified over the past months, turned into a fortress bristling with weapons. Enemy vessels entering optimal range. His tactical officer reported, Fire everything. General Minho Kang ordered. Mars unleashed its fury. Hundreds of heavy railgun batteries opened fire, accelerating massive slugs to extreme velocities. Missile silos launched their entire payload, energy weapons that humanity had adapted from captured Velkari technology, added to the maelstrom. The Velkari second wave ran straight into this wall of fire. Ships died by the hundreds, but there were so many of them. They kept coming, absorbing losses that would have broken any other fleet. Lieutenant Daehyun-oh led a boarding team onto a Velkari battleship that had been crippled near Mars. His Marines fought through the ship's corridors, capturing it before the crew could destroy it. But as he secured the bridge, he saw through the viewports that the battle was not going well. Human ships were dying. For every Velkari vessel destroyed, 2 human ships were lost. The mathematics of attrition were working against Earth. On the Retribution, Commander Boris Shin calculated the remaining time until the defenses collapsed. At current loss rates, we have 4 hours before they break through to Earth orbit, she said quietly. Then we hold for 4 hours, Admiral Taeyang Choi replied. And then we activate the Seoul defense grid. Sir, the grid is untested. We don't know if it will work. It will work. Dr. Suji Han has never failed us. The Admiral's voice carried absolute confidence. We just need to get the Velkari into position. The battle raged for 14 hours straight. Space around Earth was filled with debris from destroyed ships. The number of dead on both sides climbed into the hundreds of thousands. But the Velkari kept pushing forward, their massive numbers slowly overwhelming the defenders. Captain Hyeon Yu had been flying for 12 hours without rest. His fighter was damaged, leaking air from a dozen small holes. Half his squadron was gone, but he kept fighting, kept firing, kept believing that somehow they would win. All fighters, one more push, he called to his surviving pilots. Hit their command ships, make them pay for every meter they advance. The fighters dove into the enemy formation in a desperate attack. Hyun fired his last missiles at a Velkari battleship, then used his railgun until it overheated. When his ammunition ran out, he rammed his fighter into the battleship's bridge, ejecting at the last second. His emergency beacon activated as he tumbled through space in his suit. Private Lee Seol-jang fired her railgun until the barrel warped from heat. When that failed, she grabbed a rifle and prepared to defend the station from boarding parties. The Velkari were everywhere now, close enough to see with naked eyes through the viewport. On Earth, people looked up and saw the battle. The sky was filled with flashes of light as ships died overhead. Some prepared to fight in the streets. Others held their loved ones close, accepting whatever was coming. Then Admiral Taeyang Choi gave the order that would change everything. Dr. Suji Han, activate the Seoul defense grid full power, deep within the moon, buried in excavated chambers that had taken years to build. The most powerful weapons humanity had ever created came online. These were not guns or missiles. They were gravity wave generators, devices that could manipulate the fundamental fabric of space itself. Dr. Suji Han stood in the control room, her fingers hovering over the activation command. This was her life's work, built from a combination of human engineering and captured alien technology. If it failed, Earth would fall. If it succeeded, they might survive. She pressed the button, the Seoul defense grid fired. Invisible waves of gravitational force pulsed out from the moon in carefully calculated patterns. These waves didn't destroy ships directly. Instead, they disrupted faster-than-light drives and energy shields, creating interference patterns that rendered them useless. Across the Velkari fleet, every ship suddenly lost its FTL capability. They were stranded in the Sol system, unable to escape. Their shields flickered and failed as the gravity waves disrupted their power systems. Now, Admiral Taeyang Choi roared. All ships, full attack. Show them what happens when you threaten our home. The human fleet, battered and depleted but still fighting, surged forward with renewed fury. Without shields, the Velkari ships were vulnerable to kinetic weapons. Railgun fire tore through hulls. Missiles found their targets. The battle turned from a slow defeat into a desperate melee. Warlord Thexnar stared in horror at his displays. His flagship had no shields. Half his fleet was reporting similar problems. They were trapped in the system with no way to retreat. All ships, close combat, he ordered desperately. Board their vessels. Use our